Well, we go to the same church and we're in the same life group. We meet regularly on a Tuesday night and have, prayer and, mutual discussion.
What happened was my dad died and I got an inheritance, so suddenly I had a big chunk of money more than I never had in my whole life. And I want to make a wise investment, and of course buying a home is a wise investment, so we looked around and got one perfect for our needs. My wife was happy. Unfortunately, about a year after the live-in date, was certified to be able to be sold, we found out that there was a leak underneath the balcony, and that was the beginning, and then it just went from there, and then we were finding more problems and so forth and so on. Naively, I didn't get an inspection before buying it because I thought it's a new property. New properties have to be up to code and everything before they can sell it, so surely there shouldn't be any problem.
Unfortunately, I didn't remind you that
I didn't even know there was a Jim's building inspections, to be honest about it.
Well, what we're doing today is we're going to bring in some absolute experts from our division, and they're going to have a look and they're going to see everything that's wrong. And they're going to be act as witnesses in your case against the builder.
Sounds great. Fantastic.
G'day Eric, how are you, mate? I've got to do
good with
the
that.
greeting. Good to meet you. Understand you've got a few problems with your building here.
Quite a few, unfortunately. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to start today just by having a bit of a look to start off. Tell me what your concerns are. Then from there, I'll get my equipment out and we'll have a good close look. I'll put together a report for you. At the end of that, you'll then be in a position to go forward. I understand you're looking to go to VCAT, so there's a dispute with the builder, not just your property, but also the adjoining units as well.
Yes.
All right, so maybe we'll just go over it, have a bit of a look, and you can point out the things you're concerned about.
All right, well, this was the first problem 12 months after it was built. I started to have a leak here. Mold growing over here, and then now this is the dangerous part. The water is starting to come through here, and look at how close it's bubbling here. It's getting close to the electrical. We put all of our savings into this investment, for retirement, so we have a place to live when we retire and all that. And we want to live in a place that's growing in value, not depreciating every time it rains.
So part of a VCAT report is to identify those costs so that the member can assess what needs to be done, and that's where our role comes in as expert witnesses.
That came through one time. So we got that, and then you got it streaming down here.
Wow. So not just the balcony.
So you have that up there. When it's raining, I'm just a good steady rain. I have videos of this. It goes right over those gutters and just streams down, and then it comes down the house. So then, that's potentially going inside the windows. We did have leaks on that window. I just kind of plugged it up a little bit, but when is that gonna start coming in again? So you have the pooling there. It's not draining into the drains like it's supposed to be. And then even if it goes in the drains, apparently those pipes are leaking. If you buy a car, it has to be roadworthy. It has to be up to standards. I just assumed that the house would be roadworthy equivalent.
Most builders don't set out to necessarily build something badly. So many times builders will seek out cheap trades, and often cheap trade just means cheap and nasty. Nobody builds for no reason, you build to make money. But when builders maximise the profit at the cost of doing the job properly, this stuff comes home to roost. Well, the builder himself is not building it. The licensed principal probably isn't out on the tools anywhere, but it's under that company name. They rely then on construction managers, building managers, and site supervisors down the bottom. Those site supervisors have to engage trades, and those trades are the ones who need to be managed. Where do you get your supervisors from? Well, last month he was a carpenter, or he could have been a tiler. Now he's promoted to being a supervisor that may not have great knowledge of all of the build function. If they're busy, all they do is call up the job. They're not directly supervising the works. The person building the home too often is actually the unskilled trade. In Victoria, there's only 2 licensed trades working on your house. Typically that is your electrician and your plumber. Whilst we can't tell the builder what to do, what we can do is work for the client to provide the expertise they don't have. That's really important, Most people only build once or twice in a lifetime. So they need someone in their corner looking after them. When it comes to dealing with the builders, most builders don't want to know about us. We provide a detailed report. That detailed report arms you, the owner, with the information to get things done and fixed. It's very common when the builder finds out that you've got a good inspector on board that things are done better. They know they have to step up, and that's a real benefit to the person engaging the inspector. We often find that the builder will serve a claim when it's reached a particular stage. When they get informed that someone like myself is coming out to inspect it, oh, it's not ready yet, they'll have to come back next week. And yet they're put through the invoice for the claim when it's not ready yet. Suddenly things start to get put back on track where they should be.
This area is a concern for me because this is actually under your lounge room.
Yeah.
Right, so what we're looking at is these little blue spots. It's just showing there, you can see yellow is normal and the darkened areas are showing that it's wet, it's moisture. So the concern I've got here is that, is there any effect going on upstairs? So at this stage I would suggest it's all water residue that's coming from the balcony, and it's, so this will have to actually be removed as well. So there's going to be a fair amount of remediation and drying required because they can't actually put it all back together until it's dry. So the only good thing with this right now is it's not a habitable space. So we've just got to make sure that your flooring above in your lounge room is free of mould and it's structurally still sound.
So Eric, this part here in the expert witness report that we're going to do, we'll have a detail on where the water is coming from the upstairs tiling and where it's pooling and why the water is not submerging into the drain pipes properly. So this whole ceiling area, we'll have to pull the plaster down. Pretty much all the timbers that have been built with, all the framing joists, will have to come out. We'll talk about in the report as well the front area having water problems in those flashing areas at the front, but this area, basically we'll be explaining in the expert witness report that to the member the costings around this and what's going to have to happen to rectify it. Yeah, what you typically have here is a bad design, faults in the way it's been designed from the start. What we're trying to do is cram all the buildings into a small area, and what happens is, because it's so tight, you get these, you're not able to have genuine pitched roofs. You can have flat roofs, but then there's all these other little, on the first floor, type of areas where you've got flashings, box gutters, water trying to escape out of the building with these little indents of design. Water ingress is just a massive problem. And when you're trying to build in these tight density units, spaces from the architect to the developer, everything gets squeezed out, and this is the end result. You get water problems inside your place. So yeah, we've really got to do something about it.
So there's a couple of things we want to check with the balcony. The first and most important thing is to make sure that there's adequate fall running towards the drains. We've got 2 drains here. We want to make sure the water's getting there. We also want to look and have a look at where it's starting to pool water. So water should not pool on the surface of any balcony. It should be free draining. It's important because you don't want a slip hazard. You also don't want to have a situation where the water sits there for long periods of time, because that potentially can soak in. So ideally, it should be free draining. We can see that there's definitely some fall here. It's now a question of how much and how it's running. So again, using a basic assessment with the spirit level over a 2 metre distance, we can see that the level indicates with the bubble it's falling the right way. We also use standard packers. These packers have got incremental markings that tell us exactly what it is. The white packers, they're 10 millimetres. So it's still got a way to go. Okay, the black packer, 2.5 mil. So what we've got there now is 22.5 millimetres of fall that we can see with the level now being in the right position. That's certainly adequate fall across that distance. So again, happy with the amount of fall that's here. I want to check now to make sure that there's fall across to the other drain. And we're also going to look at an area we can see staining where water's been accumulating. The next tool that I'm going to use is a digital level. The digital level is designed to take readings right across the surface, and it can be used, for example, in a structure where you might be in one room and you want to check the levels appropriate around a corner where you can't get a visual sighting. So by being able to move from room to room across a large area, you can actually check the levels. Ideal for checking slabs, a situation where there might be a frame going up or a place that's being plastered. You want to go around and just check the floors and make sure they're right. Perfect tool for the job. So really quite a simple tool to look at. A little bit expensive, but that's what we'd expect from a laser digital level. But what we're going to do now is just set it up, calibrate it for the surface, and then we'll move across the areas to see what the variation is. It should give us readings as we go around. So I've just zeroed it over here. And what we'll do is we'll just check it incrementally, working towards the drains. We can see from that point to here, there's around about 10 millimeters of fall across this way, which is fine. Again, from the initial datum or the starting point to here, we've got a variation of 14 mil fall. So it's actually leaning slightly back towards the house, but running via the drain, which is fine. And we know from our earlier reading with the engineer's level that we've got fall running back this way towards the drain. So from 18 mil down to here, which is now showing 5 mil or 4 mil on the scale. So we can see there's 14 millimeters of fall running back towards that drain point, more than adequate across that surface. So what we're going to do here with the balcony now is to do a water test. There's several methods. You could use a bucket, which is called a bucket water test. The idea of that is you pour a quantity of water on a surface. We'll be testing to see if it's draining freely, so you don't need a massive amount of water. What we're testing here though is to see if the balcony is leaking, and we would expect, based on the evidence downstairs, that that leaking would be something that could occur if it's rained for a period of time and the water is soaking through. A little bit different to drainage. We're now talking about the effect of water penetrating through these layers to see if it's getting in. So we're going to use the hose. We'll run the hose for about 5 minutes just to see what's happening. We can see that the water surface area is draining reasonably freely. So what we're going to do now is an invasive inspection. With the owner's permission, we can go ahead, cut a hole here so that we can see what's happening inside, also see what's happening underneath the tiled area of the balcony. So this will allow us to see if there's moisture coming through. Most importantly, I'll get a glimpse of what's happening to the material, and if the structural pieces of timber which are supporting this balcony are being impacted by advanced timber decay. So it can happen. I wouldn't expect to see an extensive amount of timber decay because the property's only 2 to 3 years old. But with a failure like this, lots of things can happen. It can be a bit scary. So there are things you can use like a stud finder, or you can simply sound it out. We can hear that's quite hollow. Solid just here. So where it's solid, that's obviously not where I want to cut. I want to keep to this side of it. So I'm just going to mark that out, and then we'll make a simple cut through there, open it up. Doesn't need to be too accurate. Plaster repairs are pretty easy to do. But as I said, in this instance, we know we're going to take the plaster out. Try and get in behind here, and hopefully we can just break this away nice and neatly. It's actually quite saturated, so it's breaking away quite easily. So where we've opened up is immediately beneath one of the drains, which is interesting. We can see that the PVC pipe is running up into the substrate above. We're just looking to see if there's any moisture there at the moment. The timber itself to the hand feels a bit damp, so we'll check that with the moisture meter as well. It is treated pine, which is good to know. So we can see that's been used in the construction. The only other concern then is the connections. The connections with the treated pine, which is typically done using framing nails. Treated pine should always use stainless steel nails. The way we're going to tell is obviously to look for evidence of rust. So if those nails are heavily rusted already, that means there's a potential for failure. So simply putting a new surface on here straight onto the timber frame could be problematic. So we need to do a little bit more inquiry just to establish how bad that is. So just around the drain itself, we can see there's moisture leaking. It's not well sealed, and that's easily determined. There's a product above us which appears to be fairly watertight at the moment. I'm not too concerned about that. This timber here, treated pine, does feel damp to the touch, so we're going to check out the moisture content of that as well. I can see further in there's evidence of water leaks that are actually coming through the material joins. So that material, it appears to be Scion, which is a cement type product. So it's unlikely that would leak, but the joins themselves, they can leak quite easily. Also notice that it's been nailed down using framing gun nails. Not ideal, because when you start punching holes through this material, you increase the chances of leaks through each of those penetrations. So we'll take some photos of those nails, a couple of which have missed the timber, so that makes it really easy to see exactly what they are. So we want to see what the timber's doing here. And yes, it's off the scale. So really high moisture content in the treated pine timber. We wouldn't expect timber that's inside an enclosed area to be excessively damp. So that's another indication of the water damage that's occurring. And again, around the drain, we can see the moisture. It's evident, but it's also showing high reading on the scale. That's the alarm that's going off. So all of that flooring area there is absolutely saturated. So we'll photograph all of this, we'll document it to put into the report, which will be prepared for VCAT. Again, if we were doing just a normal inspection, we'd be limited to the outside surfaces, but this is an invasive inspection. Call Jim's Building Inspections. If you need a building inspection of any type, we're there for you. Jim's 131 546, or you can find us on the website jimsbuildinginspections.com.au.